So my question is, you said that in Judaism, they've invented this golden past, some of the Orthodox. Can you explain what that is? This mythology, that's part of their new mythology.
They've made a mythology of the age of the Second Temple, and they've basically turned it into the all-in-all golden age of the Jewish religion, and basically have rejected the concept that Judaism can exist without a temple.
Yes.
And you're seeing it very strongly these days.
Yes. So can I quote you something from one of these people that said to me just yesterday that I did not understand that you can explain to me? The Second Temple was destroyed.
Yeah.
And all these rabbis were crying, and Rabbi Akiba was there, and he was laughing. And they said to him, "Why are you laughing?" And he said, "It was prophesied that this temple would be destroyed before the temple would be rebuilt. So the prophecy is coming true, so the temple will be rebuilt."
The prophecy is true, or the other one is
true?
So
I heard this yesterday. Tell me, was that BS? Is that true, what they were telling in terms of theology?
That's a very famous Talmudic legend.
Yes.
Saying that rabbis were going to Jerusalem and were seeing, not wolves, shual, fox. They were seeing foxes moving among the ruins of the Holy of Holies, and they were crying.
Yes.
And Rabbi Akiva told them, well, he wasn't crying, and said, "Why aren't you crying?" He said, "Well, it was prophesied, and we see the prophecy fulfilled. Therefore, we shall see the other parts of the prophecy fulfilled."
Yes, yes.
One should bear in mind that Rabbi Akiva was executed by the Romans after a catastrophically failed rebellion.
Yeah.
So.
But but this episode that I brought up, is that responsive to what you started telling me about this golden past? They
are basically after the Second Temple was destroyed, Judaism was reworked from the base up, from the foundations up. It was until 70 AD. It was like most religions at the time, a religion based on sacrifices. You had to come to Jerusalem and make various sacrifices 3 times a year, plus you had all other sorts of sacrifices. You could substitute money for sacrifice. You would pay someone who would go and make the sacrifice for you.
Yes.
This was a major influence in the Middle East, and in fact in the entire Roman Empire, because the Romans were strictly keeping the flow of money and cattle to Jerusalem. Once the temple was destroyed, and it was not destroyed by accident, it was destroyed on purpose. Basically, Judaism was without an anchor. So what the rabbis of the time did, they took the institute of the synagogue, which was basically a center of community, and they revised the faith, and instead of sacrifices you had to make prayers, and you had to pray in the synagogues. Now basically every rebellion against the Romans until the late 2nd century was similar to what Al-Qaeda said, that it's improper for the Holy Land and the Holy of Holies to be occupied by foreigners. That was Al-Qaeda's basic complaint against American presence in Saudi Arabia.
Saudi Arabia, yes, of course.
So those rabbis, many of them were in fact Roman collaborators. They were the new elite. They had to build something and not become a persecuted religion like Christianity was.
Yes.
They had to reach some modus vivendi with the Romans. So what they did, they tampered down all of the nationalistic and messianic legends. A Messiah was, until that time, a Messiah was basically a strong ruler, someone who could unite the people and lead them. After the catastrophic Bar Kokhba rebellion, led by Rabbi Akiva, the Messiah metamorphosized. It became a legendary figure. It had to be able to speak the language of birds and animals. It had to be able to perform miracles. and basically it became so remote from human life that no one could actually claim to be the Messiah, because he would be automatically be a false Messiah.
Yes.
Because he could not speak to animals.
Yes.
Could not speak to birds. Well, he could speak to them; they wouldn't reply. So the rabbis did everything they could to tamper down the messianic pressure, which was their part of the deal with the Romans.
I see.
In return, they basically received uninterrupted rule. The last Nasi, I forget the Greek terms. There is a Greek term. Ruled in 410, well into Byzantine Empire, the Empire, and well into the Christian Empire.
Yes.
The last Nasi was removed by the emperor.
Yes.
He was an emperor, an imperial official.
Yes.
And no one was appointed in his place. And that's when the basically the oligarchy of the rabbis in Palestine came to an end. By the time there weren't many Jews in Palestine.
But leaping forward, Yossi, is it possible to imagine a time in which the Jewish religion, as you describe it, didn't function altogether different from any other religion, which has such an official character to it? Is it possible to imagine a time in which anti-Zionism becomes a part of Jewish faith, because religions are so fluid?
I think that anti-Zionism
yes.
always was a part of the Jewish faith. Always was. When you look at the early anti-Zionists,
yes.
they often couch their resistance to Zionism in religious terms. They are saying, what you are asking us to do is forbidden in the Talmud.
Yes.
The three vows which forbid the Jews from emigrating en masse to Palestine.
Yes.
And which forbid them to agitate the nations.
Yes.
So
you're forbidden to agitate the nations, the Goyim. So you're supposed to live peacefully within.
You're supposed to live peacefully. One day the Messiah will come. This will be the end of days.
Yes.
And then the temple will be rebuilt.
Yes, and everyone will worship.
But you are not to hasten it.
Yes. Oh, you're not to hasten it. Okay. I see.
So basically, Zionism was an anti-Orthodox revolt.
Yes. But anyone who says that Judaism has an essential quality, if one were to say that an essential attribute of Judaism is X or Y, isn't part of our discussion involve the fact that these religions are fluid and that they can be reinterpreted, just as the U.S. Constitution
always are, but there are essential principles.
Okay.
Basically, to be a Christian, you have to believe that Jesus was either the Messiah or the Son of God, one of two. You can take both, but if you don't accept one of these principles, then you're not really a Christian.
And so, what would you say when someone says to me? Lately, someone said to me, "You're not a Jew," and I said, "Well, I'm a Jew," and I thought I described it because I bridled against it, and I said I just talked about all these ways that culturally I understand myself to be Jewish. Okay, but what is a Jew?
Okay, I would say that the answer would be different in Israel and in the diaspora.
Okay.
Because to be a Jew in Israel is to be drawn into the atavistic part of Judaism, because the state is built on those parts. The Jewish state is built on those parts. So if you're trying to build a Judaism which is not nationalistic here, you're going against the grain, and you're going to have a very hard time at it.
Yes.
It's not impossible. Some Reform Jews have done it, but it's kind of weird.
Yeah.
It's not an accident that Israel is a Jewish Orthodox state, not a Jewish state, Jewish Orthodox state. It barely recognizes other forms of Judaism, because Orthodox Judaism is nationalistic, is chauvinistic, and does believe in Jewish supremacy, which the Jewish state is all about. So basically, I used to make a rough contrast between the American Jews and the Israeli Jews, and I said, Jews who wanted to live peacefully with their neighbors went to America.
Yes.
Jews who wanted to conquer their neighbors went to Palestine.
Or maybe were afraid of their neighbors.
Or maybe, I think, given the nature of the great immigration to the US and Palestine, which basically happens in the same time, the late 1880s, they were all afraid of their neighbors, and they had perfectly good reasons to be afraid of their neighbors. Eastern Europe was not good for its Jews. But the people who went to the US basically wanted to integrate in society. And the people who went to Palestine wanted to create a new society which would reverse the rule and make them rulers.
Yes, interesting.
And you hear that in Echad Ha'am, which writes, again, the late 1880s and early 1890s. And he writes that the early Zionists are acting towards the Arabs with chutzpah and with violence, and basically treating them as colonialists treat natives. And I think that captures, and he is very upset about this. This is not how Jews should behave. But I think this captures basically the essence of Zionism, that Jews want to be rulers. Not to be ruled.
And but when will this change?
Here?
Yes. When will that ethos change?
I don't think it will change. I think either we will suffer a catastrophic defeat, basically 100,000 dead, something like that. That may force people to rethink. Then again, it may not. It may entrench them in their opinions, and they will think we didn't use enough force. At the moment, I think there's a very strong possibility of a new Nakba within the next 2-3 years. And I'm seeing it in Jerusalem.
The transfer, pushing out.
And ethnic cleansing.
Yes. And we are seeing that in Jerusalem now.
We are seeing a government which is pressing its occupied population as far as it can go, provoking it for more violence, and then reacting with more violence until something breaks. I don't see any other logical explanation for the policy.
I see. Yossi, thank you again for answering my questions.